I never imagined that on my own mother's birthday, I would be the one receiving the cruelest gift of all betrayal. That evening, our hilltop house glowed under the warm golden lights, filled with laughter and chatter. I, Emily Reed, 32 years old, an architect, had flown back from Denver just to make my mother happy. Everything seemed perfect until my father raised his glass, smiled proudly, and said, "From today on, this house officially belongs to Aaron." Quote. Aaron, my younger brother, smiled triumphantly, and I, the one who had paid almost the entire mortgage for this house, just stood there frozen. Everyone clapped. I forced a smile, but inside, one question kept echoing in my mind. How could they do this to me? I didn't know then. That night was only the beginning of a web of lies, far darker than I could ever imagine. I remember vividly the day everything started to fall apart, the winter when I was 26. That was when my mother was diagnosed with heart disease and needed emergency surgery. My father had just been laid off from his construction job, and Aaron, my younger brother, was supposedly studying business in California, but in reality, spent most of his time gaming and partying. At that time, I had just landed my dream job at an architecture firm in Denver, the one I'd spent my whole youth working toward. But when the first hospital bill arrived, I realized our family couldn't afford it. Mom kept saying, "Don't worry about us, Emily. Focus on your future. I'll be fine." But how could I? I sold my only car, an old Honda, just to cover the first round of hospital fees. Then I borrowed from my company's retirement fund and sent money home every month. When the bank threatened to repossess our house because Dad couldn't keep up with the mortgage, I drained the savings I'd built over 7 years to save it. That house meant everything to me: the smell of Mom's apple pie on Sundays, the porch where I drew my very first design. I couldn't let it disappear over a few numbers on a piece of paper. For the next 3 years, I silently became the family's provider. I paid for roof repairs, replaced the plumbing, even bought new furniture when the old ones rotted from dampness. Each time I came home, Dad would say, "Thank you, Emily. Once things get better, I'll pay you back." And I believed him. I really did. As for Aaron, after Mom recovered, he dropped out of college, claiming he wanted to start his own business. But his businesses were a series of disasters, from online gadget sales to crypto investments. When he failed, he'd come home, tearfully begging for one last chance. My parents always forgave him, and the person they called for help was always me. I used to think, as long as they're happy, I can carry a bit more. But that bit more stretched until I was 31. That's when I realized I had become the lone pillar, holding up a house where love had quietly faded away. Mom's health kept declining. Dad kept saying, "Once Aaron settles down, things will get better." And Aaron kept spending money like tomorrow didn't exist. I sent $1,200 each month, calling it roof repairs, though deep down I knew where it went. I tried not to think about it. Then one day, while reviewing my bank records, I noticed a small loan under my name, $5,000. I called Dad, and he laughed awkwardly. "Oh, that's just a mix-up at the bank. Don't worry, I'll take care of it." And I believed him again. Looking back now, that was probably the first sign, the first crack, in a plan that had been kept hidden from me all along. During those years, I threw myself into work, eventually becoming a lead designer. I was proud of the life I'd built, independent, successful, yet I lied to myself, thinking my family loved me for my sacrifices. In truth, they loved the convenience I provided. When Mom wanted a new kitchen, I paid for it. When Aaron wanted to try one last investment, I wired the money. When Dad wanted a used truck to start side jobs, I said yes. I was always the good daughter, the reliable one, the understanding big sister. But behind that word understanding was a heartbreakingly naive girl. The night of Mom's birthday, when Dad announced the house would go to Aaron, every memory came crashing down: the sleepless nights, the sketches I worked on until dawn, the years I spent earning enough to keep them safe. Suddenly all felt meaningless. I looked at Dad, the man who once promised to pay me back. I looked at Mom, silent as ever. Then I looked at Aaron, glowing with victory. And in that moment, I understood something I'd ignored for years. Even love has limits. When kindness becomes obligation, Every sacrifice turns to dust. What I didn't know then was that the worst was still ahead. Because that betrayal, the one that shattered me that night, was only the tip of the iceberg. Beneath it lay a web of numbers, forged signatures, and a debt I never signed for. ChatGPT.noi. A week after my mother's birthday party, I flew back to Denver and tried to focus on my new project. But no matter how hard I tried, something kept gnawing at me. A small, persistent voice in the back of my mind whispering, "The house is under Aaron's name now." I was used to being hurt, but this time, something felt different. Something was wrong. 3 days later, while checking my company emails, I accidentally opened my personal inbox and froze. There it was, an email from Riverstone Bank, the same place where I'd opened my savings account years ago. The subject line made my heart drop. Overdue payment notice, joint loan account 75,000 quote. I just stared at it. What loan? I had never co-signed anything in my life. I immediately called the bank. A polite but firm voice answered. "Hello, Miss Reed. Your joint loan with Mr. Richard Reed is now 15 days overdue. We need to confirm your repayment plan." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Richard Reed, that was my father. I sat there in silence, my heart pounding. Then I asked her to read me the details. Loan amount, $75,000. Purpose, investment in a bar business in Denver. Signed May 2nd of last year. The file contains both your and Mr. Reed's signatures. I shot up from my chair, my voice shaking. That's impossible. I never signed anything. I had no idea about this loan. There was a pause. Then the woman replied carefully, "I'm sorry, Miss Reed. The documents were verified in person at our Missoula branch. If you suspect forgery, you can file a formal request for a signature review." I hung up and sat frozen for what felt like hours. My hands were trembling. I didn't even know if it was from fear or rage. $75,000. That wasn't just a number. It was my reputation, my credit, my future. If they really used my name to take out that loan, I was now trapped in a debt I never created. I called my father. He picked up after several rings. "Emily, what's going on?" "Dad, the bank just called. They said there's a loan under both our names." Silence. "Oh, must be some mistake, honey. I'll check on it." "A mistake? They have the contract, my signature, and it says the money was for a bar investment. Does Aaron have anything to do with this?" "Don't start accusing him. Aaron's been trying hard. Don't make this worse." I bit my lip. His tone said everything. It wasn't a mistake and he knew it. That night, I called Lindsay, my best friend from college, now a financial lawyer. After listening quietly, she said just one thing. "Emily, the first thing you need is a copy of that original loan contract. If the signature is fake, we'll have grounds for legal action. But brace yourself. The truth usually hurts more than you think." The next morning, I flew to Missoula. Standing in front of my old bank branch, the one I once trusted to protect my savings, I felt my throat tighten. Everyone inside smiled politely, but my hands were shaking as I spoke. The branch manager brought me a copy of the contract, and there it was, Emily Reed, neatly written in soft, looping letters. It looked like my name, but it wasn't my handwriting. I knew every curve of my signature. This one was clumsy, off balance, clearly forged, yet good enough to fool the system if backed by real documents. I asked quietly, "Who submitted this loan application?" The manager hesitated, then replied, "Mr. Richard Reed and Mr. Aaron Reed. They said you agreed to co-fund the family's bar project." I let out a dry, bitter laugh. Family? That word had never felt heavier. That night, I went back to the old house. It was eerily quiet. In the living room, family photos still lined the walls, me and Aaron as kids, holding hands and grinning beneath the apple tree. I stared at them until my chest ached. I went into Dad's office and started searching through his drawers. After nearly an hour, I found another copy of the loan contract tucked between building invoices and a printed floor plan labeled Reed Lounge. Everything matched the bank's files. And worst of all, I found a photocopy of my ID, crudely cut and pasted. I sank into the chair, breathless. They had used my name, my documents, my forged signature to take money, to build a bar, and maybe to have someone to blame when it all fell apart. I didn't know who I hated more, them for betraying me, or myself, for trusting them so completely. When I stepped outside, night had already fallen. The streetlight glowed faintly over the old wooden sign that read, Reed House. And it hit me this place stopped being home a long time ago. I took out my phone and texted Lindsay. You were right. The signature's fake. I have proof. Let's start. This time, I'm not staying silent. And deep inside, I whispered like a vow. They used my name to deceive. Now, I'll use that same name to fight for justice. After that night, I could hardly sleep. Images kept replaying in my head, my father avoiding questions, Aaron's smile at the birthday party, and the fake signature at the bottom of the loan paper. I lay staring at the ceiling, feeling like I was in an old movie where the main character has been betrayed but still hasn't figured it out. Early next morning, I left my apartment, taking the bank papers with me in a cold determination. I had to know the whole truth. I met Lindsay at a cafe in downtown Missoula. She looked through the loan copy and sighed. This is forgery and financial fraud. But since they are family, you need solid proof emails, receipts, bank statements, witness statements, everything. I agreed. In my head, I already had a plan. I went back to the old house and pretended I was just visiting Mom. Walking through that familiar door felt strange, both comfortable and distant. My mother sat in the living room, looking at me with worried eyes. You're home? Your father's out. Aaron's in the basement, working on some new business plan. I smiled like nothing had happened. I just want to look through some old papers. I think there were kitchen receipts here. I went up to the attic, the place where I used to store old boxes when we fixed the house. The attic smelled of dust and old wood. Light filtered in through the roof, making dim stripes on the floor. I opened box after box. Among the old bills, I found a thick file tied with an elastic band. On the corner it said, Reed Lounge, Project 2023. I opened it. Business plan, price quotes for materials, purchase orders, receipts all paid with the $75,000 loan. The last page said, Financial sponsor, Emily Reed. My throat went dry. Under that was a printed email from Aaron's account to Dad. If Emily asks, tell her it's a joint plan. She doesn't need to know the details. We just need her to sign the bank papers. I could barely breathe. They didn't just use my name. They planned to hide it from me. A sound came from behind. Aaron stood in the attic doorway, arms crossed, with a half smile. What are you doing up here? I'm looking for my money. My money? You always think everything is yours, don't you? He stepped closer, voice low. Without you, the bar would be dead. You should be proud. I laughed, but it was a dry, bitter laugh. Proud of being betrayed? Of being used to take out a loan? He shrugged, acting like he didn't care. It's temporary. When the bar makes money, you'll be paid back. Mom and Dad just wanted to help me a little. You always act like the hero, Emily. Those words felt like a knife. I looked straight at him. No, I am not the hero anymore. I am going to expose you. I walked past Aaron, took the file, and left while he shouted, You'll regret this. I brought everything to Lindsay's office. She and her legal team copied each page and saved the evidence. She said in a serious voice, There's a contract, a forged signature, and internal emails. We can prove the intent to cheat. I nodded, heavy inside. I had never thought I would collect evidence against my own family. In the next week, Lindsay asked the bank to check the signature. The forensic report said the Emily Reed signature on the loan did not match my real signature. I had the legal proof I needed, but I wanted to know where the money went. An old friend, Jake, an accountant who used to work for a contractor in Missoula, helped. He checked tax records and found the Reed Lounge showed losses after 3 months. The investment money vanished into a shell account named Aaron R. Holdings LLC, a fake company Aaron had registered. I froze. They didn't only borrow my name, they laundered the money through it. That night I sat by my small apartment window and watched the Clark Fork River flow quietly through the town. I thought about Mom. Did she know? Or was she also deceived like me? I didn't know, but I knew one thing. I couldn't stay silent anymore. I texted my father, I'll come tomorrow. We need to talk. This time, you cannot lie. I turned off my phone and closed my eyes. One thought was clear and cold as steel. If they used my trust as a tool, I would use the truth as a weapon. I never thought I'd have to face my own family, the people I once believed I'd protect for the rest of my life. That afternoon, a light rain fell over Missoula. I drove back to the old house, where every childhood memory still lingered, though now, it no longer felt like home. In the trunk sat a thick folder, every piece of evidence proving they had forged my signature to take out a loan. When I walked in, the whole family was already gathered in the living room. My father sat in his armchair, holding a cup of coffee, avoiding my eyes. My mother sat quietly beside him, and Aaron leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, face cold, and ready for a confrontation. I took a deep breath. "I just want to make things clear," I began. "I know about the $75,000 loan, and I know whose signature was used on that form." My mother flinched, setting her teacup down. My father only sighed and said, "Emily, you're misunderstanding. Everything I did was for the family. Aaron needed capital to start over. You can't be so selfish." I let out a bitter laugh. "Selfish? I paid Mom's hospital bills. I covered the house mortgage so none of you would lose your home. I work 60 hours a week, and now you're calling me selfish?" Aaron snapped, his tone sharp. "You've always thought you were the hero, haven't you? You have a job, money, and you look down on us like we're burdens. You don't understand anything." I looked at him, my voice steady but cold. "No, Aaron. You're the one who doesn't understand. You don't know the value of money, and you certainly don't know that kindness isn't something to be exploited." I placed the folder on the table. The papers spilled out, showing the forged signature clumsy, yet close enough to fool the bank. "Here's the proof. The bank confirmed the signature was fake. I've already spoken to a lawyer. If no one takes responsibility, I'll file a lawsuit." Silence filled the room. My mother began to cry. "Emily, please don't. No matter what, we're still family. Your father only wanted to help Aaron. He made a mistake, that's all." I looked at her, the woman I loved most, but in that moment, she was begging me to stay quiet, to protect the ones who had betrayed me. "I'm sorry, Mom," I said softly. "But if I stay silent, I'll always be the fool in this family." My father stood, his voice rising. "Are you threatening your own parents?" I met his eyes. "No. I'm demanding the respect I deserve." Aaron slammed his hand on the table. "Fine. I'm the one who asked Dad to sign. Happy now? But do you know why I did it? Because you never helped me. You only care about yourself." I stared at him, my chest tight but my voice calm. "You're wrong, Aaron. You're confusing help with cleaning up your messes. This time, you'll have to face the consequences." No one spoke again. The rain outside grew heavier, blending with the suffocating silence in the room. I gathered the documents and stood. "From today on, I won't send money home anymore. I'll remove my name from every shared account. I hope you understand this is the last time I let you hurt me." As I reached the door, my mother's trembling voice called out, "Emily, are you abandoning your family?" I paused, my hand on the doorknob. "No, Mom. My family abandoned me a long time ago. I'm just the last one to realize it." I stepped outside into the rain. The folder in my hand felt heavy, not just with evidence of betrayal, but with the weight of freedom. Behind me, the door slammed shut, echoing like the end of a chapter I'd tried too hard to hold on to. As I got into my car, tears finally fell, but not from pain. For the first time, I wasn't breaking. I was reclaiming myself. The battle wasn't over, but I had finally learned how to fight. And maybe, for the first time in my life, I was truly free. ChatGPT Darnoi. I barely slept in the days after that confrontation. I had left the house I grew up in, carrying nothing but a small suitcase and a heavy folder of documents. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my father's angry face, my mother's tearful eyes, and Aaron's defiant smile. But the more I thought about it, the clearer it became if I didn't do something, they would keep doing this again and again. I went to see Sarah Nolan, an old college friend who was now a civil lawyer. After listening to everything, she shook her head slowly. "Emily, they didn't just betray your trust. They broke the law. Forging a signature to take out a loan is a criminal offense." I sat in silence. Part of me still hesitated. How could I take my own father to court? But then Sarah said something that cut through my doubt. "If you don't protect yourself, no one else will." That was the moment I made my decision. Together, we started the legal process. Sarah helped me file a formal complaint with the bank, attaching every piece of evidence, my real signature samples, bank statements, even the printed emails between Aaron and my father. At first, the bank was cautious. They launched an internal investigation, called to verify details, and examined the documents. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived. They confirmed the signature had indeed been forged. When I read that letter, tears streamed down my face, not because I was happy, but because, for the first time, someone finally believed me. Sarah then filed a lawsuit for forgery and credit fraud. When the court accepted the case, I knew there was no turning back. The first hearing took place on a Monday morning in a small courtroom in Denver County. I sat on the plaintiff's side, hands tightly gripping my folder. Across the room, my father sat with his head lowered. Aaron was beside him, his face pale and tired. Their lawyer argued it was a misunderstanding between family members, that I had given verbal consent. But they had no proof, only excuses. When it was my turn to testify, my hands trembled, but my voice did not. "I'm not doing this for money," I said. "I'm doing this because I need justice. If truth can be twisted even within a family, then nowhere is safe anymore." I laid out every detail, the payments I had made for the house, the forged documents, and the messages between Aaron and my father, discussing how to get the bank to approve it. Each piece of evidence felt like a slow, painful cut, severing the last ties between me and them. 3 weeks later, the verdict was announced. The judge ruled that my signature had been intentionally forged, and the bank had been deceived into approving the loan. The result: the loan was voided, my debt was erased, and both Aaron and my father were held legally responsible. When the sentence was read aloud, I didn't feel triumphant. Instead, I felt a deep, hollow ache, like I had just buried something sacred. My father didn't look at me once. He simply stood and walked out. My mother sat in the back row, face buried in her hands, crying. Aaron left quietly, saying nothing. I stood there for a long moment before turning to Sarah. "So, it's over?" She nodded. "It's over. You're free now." But freedom didn't come easy. Weeks later, I received a notice. The family house was being repossessed. The loan no longer had a guarantor. The place I grew up in, the home filled with laughter and memories, was now just another seized asset. One afternoon, I drove there and stood by the old fence, looking through the dusty windows. Inside, everything was empty, peeling walls, broken light fixtures, and echoes of what used to be. I didn't feel regret. I felt light. Because sometimes, to move forward, you have to let the past collapse completely. A few mornings later, an email arrived from the bank. Debt balance, $0. I stared at the screen and smiled. I sent Sarah a message. "Thank you. Not just for helping me win, but for helping me find myself again." She replied, "You didn't need me to make you strong, Emily. You just needed someone to remind you that you already were." I closed my laptop and stepped out onto the balcony. Morning sunlight spilled across the city, and a soft breeze brushed against my face. For the first time in months, my heart felt peaceful. Justice had come at the cost of family ties. But if I could go back, I'd still make the same choice. Because in the end, I chose truth. I chose self-respect. And above all, I chose freedom. ChatGPT Darnoy. I left Denver on a windy June morning. The car carried me away from the city, past the streets I once knew by heart, the cozy coffee shops, the winding hills leading to our old house. This time, I didn't cry. Maybe my tears had already run dry, along with that naive belief that family always means unconditional love. I moved to Boulder and rented a small apartment near Union Lake. It had one bedroom, one desk, and a big window where sunlight danced on the water's surface. On the first day, I spread out a gray rug, placed a cactus on the windowsill, and made myself a cup of coffee. No more shouting. No more pressure to hold everyone together. Just me and the silence. I quit my job at the big architecture firm where I'd worked for almost 10 years and opened my own small studio, Reed Design Studio. It wasn't grand, but it bore my name. I began taking small projects, homes for young couples, people building their first real nests. It felt symbolic, helping others create the warmth I never truly had in my own family. Each morning, I woke early and ran around the lake. During those quiet runs, I learned how to forgive, not them, but myself. Forgive myself for trusting too much, for letting my kindness be used, for staying silent for so long. Every night, I wrote in my journal. One evening, I wrote, Sometimes, we must lose everything to find ourselves again. And some losses aren't tragic if they set us free. Eventually, I began posting snippets of my writing online, just to release my feelings. To my surprise, thousands of people shared my story. Many had lived through the same kind of pain, betrayed, dismissed, used in the name of family. Messages poured in. One woman from California wrote, "Your story gave me the courage to leave a husband who always made me feel small. Thank you for reminding me I deserve better." When I read that, I realize something. Sometimes revenge isn't about making someone suffer, it's proving that you can still live well, live right, after everything. A year passed. One autumn afternoon in Denver, I ran into my mother by chance. She looked thinner, her eyes sad but gentle. She walked toward me quietly and said, "Your father passed away 2 months ago. He didn't want you to know." I froze. No anger, no tears, just silence like standing in an empty room. She took my hand, her fingers trembling. "He was wrong, Emily, but he was always proud of you. He just didn't know how to show it." I nodded, smiling faintly. "I know, Mom. I'm not angry anymore." We sat together for a long time. She told old stories. I listened. It felt like hearing the final verse of a long, sad song. When we said goodbye, I hugged her tightly. Maybe forgiveness doesn't always need to be spoken aloud. That evening, back in my apartment, I turned on the soft yellow light and looked out over the lake, glowing with sunset. I realized I had truly survived the storm. No more rage, no more hurt. Just a woman who had fallen but learned to rise again on her own. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and typed the final lines of a story I once thought I'd never be brave enough to tell. If one day you're betrayed by the people you love most, remember, you're not alone. And sometimes, justice isn't found in court, but in the decision to live differently. I paused, took a deep breath, and smiled. My life had finally found its true direction, not the path they chose for me, but the one I drew for myself. Now, I'm no longer afraid of being alone. I've learned that true peace doesn't come from being loved. It comes from loving yourself. I may have lost a family, but I found something far more precious: my own identity. If it were you, would you forgive your family if they forged your signature to steal from you? Or would you take them to court? And tell me, in a family, where should the line of sacrifice truly end?